Hi everyone, welcome back to the second lesson on how to prepare for the speaking part of TOEFL exam in 2026. As we discussed previously, speaking is a productive skill, so you need to do a lot of practice, especially practice with AI or with partner. In the future, we're going to have a lot of lessons on practicing, so don't worry about it. We'll discuss that. Remember a key point, AI can be really helpful here because TOEFL is tested by AI, it's assessed by AI, so it'll allow you to comfortably practice with AI. You may kind of warm up and train your AI a little bit to make sure that the feedback that it provides is useful for you, but you don't need to worry much about the feedback. You can just use it as a practice partner. After a bunch of practices, you will get some information, get some idea of where you're going wrong. For example, is it your pronunciation? Is it your vocabulary? Is it your grammar? Is it the problem? Do you have a problem with your time or the way or how fluent you are? Or most importantly, is your answer relevant to the question or not? So these are the things that we want to get more information and more feedback on and work on for the future. But again, don't worry, we're gonna discuss all of these in practice lessons in the future. So for now, let's just focus on what's going to happen in the second part of the speaking test, which is an interview. If you remember, and as I told you before, this looks like a combination between part 1 and part 3 of IELTS exam. So part 1 of IELTS exam is an interview where the examiner is asking you some questions about yourself. Here we kind of have the same going on here. If you look at, for example, this question here, it is asking you, so do you live in a city or a village, or things like that. And then as you go on, you see there are some questions that are asking you about your opinion and stuff. So more discussion-based questions, similar to what we have in IELTS part 3. But regardless, I'm going to show you a kind of a strategy, a routine to make sure that you do not miss important information from the question and you can answer the question as good as possible. Let's read the rubrics as always. It says, an interviewer will ask you questions. Answer the questions and be sure to say as much as possible. This is very important. You have some time that's shown on the screen. You have to be able to talk as much as possible. I recommend that you consider a 20 to 30 seconds time lapse for your practices. Again, this might be different in the exam, but for different parts, but this is the time that I want you to use when you're practicing at home. One thing that's going to help you practice easily and be ready for the test is to make sure that your answer is organized. I always recommend students to start their response by giving the actual answer to the question and then build up on it. All right. There are many ways to do that. You can use examples, reasons, and other things to develop your answer. But this is going to be really helpful. Always remember, create this structure in your mind that you answer the question first and then build up on it. Try not to repeat the question, but answer the question at the beginning. Let's see an example. It says, thank you for speaking with me today. I am conducting a study about people's experiences and perceptions of living in a city. I'd like to ask you some questions. There is a pause. Now, do you currently live in a big city, a small town, or a village? Start by answering the question. I live in a metropolitan called Istanbul. Remember the minimum 20 seconds rule that I told you earlier. So, I live in a cosmopolitan called Istanbul. Istanbul is the biggest city in Turkey and I live on the European side of it. It is a very touristy place, and more information about the part that you want to give. So make sure that you remember that minimum 20 seconds rule. You can use the same routine for next questions. For example, let's take a look at this one. Some people believe that those who live in cities lead more interesting lives. They would argue, for example, people who live in the cities have more access to professional opportunities and interesting leisure activities. Do you agree that people who live in cities lead more interesting lives? Why or why not? Okay. As always, we answer the question, do we agree, we don't agree, or we sit on the fence, or we have a balanced opinion. It can be either of these three things. It's just important how well and how well you can articulate it in your answers. So start by giving the answer. I strongly believe that cities and metropolitan areas provide more interesting lives for people. For example, in other words, in fact, as a matter of fact, and I use a lot of information to support my answer. One of the things that can really help you practice for this part is to read a lot of example answers. Remember, as a teacher, I usually never give my students templates or things to memorize. If you do that, examiners are going to find out. Even the AI is trained to find it out. So don't do it, all right? Make sure the answer is yours. But you can read a lot of sample answers, good answers, and use them, optimize them for your own answer a little bit. Sometimes, for example, you want to talk about how big your city is. You know a lot of words, but you just don't remember the word metropolitan, for example. Well, it comes to your mind and you can use it. So why not? Get ideas. Before practicing it yourself, try to read a bunch of sample answers. Again, you can simply ask AI to produce some sample answers for you. You can read them, get some ideas, put your thoughts together and practice. Record your voice, share your recording with AI, share your recording with your teachers, with your friends, with anybody whose English is better than you, and get their feedback. Work on the feedback, do it again. Work on the feedback, do it again. Pay attention to things like pronunciation, how many pauses you have, how well you start and finish, how well you connect your sentences, and how accurate is your grammar. This part can be a little bit tricky, so if you have any questions, don't forget to ask me. A lot of this is new, especially for people who have done other tests that are not like this. So you may have a lot of questions. Drop them in the comment section. Let's deal with them together. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.